Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Story Time. How are we doing today? All right. So, where we left off yesterday, uh, quick catch up for those who weren't here or would like a brief refresher. Let's see. We had our party of Shasta, Aravis, Bree, and Wynn were making their way over to Arkenland and Anvard by extension, to try to get there before Prince Rabidash and his army of 200 people that were trying to take over the city. On their way there, they were attacked by a lion. Aravis got injured. Shasta was the only one who was capable of running ahead, according to the monk, to try to catch uh, the king before anyone else did. So Shasta ran off alone. Bree, Wynn, and Aravis stayed behind with the hermit, and Shasta caught up to King Loon and informed him of the impending attack, and was given a horse to ride back with them. Unfortunately, he got lost because he does not know how to actually ride a horse, as we've established. Meanwhile, Bree is busy feeling guilty about not turning back when Aravis was attacked by the lion, and has very wounded pride. Shasta ends up in Narnia, but not before meeting Aslan, the uh, mystical lion of the series, first introduced in previous installments. And from there, Shasta stays with some dwarves and reunites with Prince Corin and the returning party of Narnians, um, including King Edmund and Queen Lucy. One of the dwarves gets injured, and Corin has the bright idea for Shasta to put on the dwarf's armor and sneak in to fight at Anvard. That was a brief catch up. A little bit, you know, I mean, really no spoiler warning needed, because if you were here yesterday, you already know. And if you weren't, then, well, at least you're caught up. So, with that in mind, we are going to finish the story. Starting with Chapter 13, The Fight at Anvard. By about 11 o'clock the whole company was once more on the march, riding westward with the mountains on their left. Corin and Shasta rode right at the rear, with the giants immediately in front of them. Lucy and Edmund and Peregrine were busy with their plans for the battle, and though Lucy once said, "But where is his goose-cap, Highness?" Edmund only replied, "Not in the front, and that's good news enough. Leave well alone." Shasta told Corin most of his adventures and explained that he had learned all his riding from a horse and didn't really know how to use the reins. Corin instructed him in this, besides telling him all about their secret sailing from Tashbaan. "And where is the Queen Susan?" "At Cair Paravel," said Corin. "She's not like Lucy, you know. It's as good as a man, or at any rate as good as a boy. Queen Susan is more like an extraordinary grown-up lady. She doesn't ride to the wars, though she is an excellent archer." The hillside path which they were following became narrower all the time, and the drop on their right hand became steeper. At last they were going in single file along the edge of a precipice, and Shasta shuddered to think that he had done the same last night without knowing it. "But of course," he thought, "I was quite safe. That is why the lion kept on my left. He was between me and the edge all the time." Then the path went left and south, away from the cliff, and there were thick woods on both sides of it, and they went steeply up and up into the pass. There would have been a splendid view from the top if it were open ground, but among all those trees you could see nothing, only every now and then some huge pinnacle of rock above the treetops, and an eagle or two wheeling high up in the blue air. "They smell battle," said Corin, pointing at the birds. "They know we're preparing a feed for them." Shasta didn't like this at all. When they had crossed the neck of the pass and came a good deal lower they reached more open ground, and from here Shasta could see all Archenland, blue and hazy, spread out below him, and even, he thought, a hint of the desert beyond it. But the sun, which had perhaps 2 hours or so to go before it set, was in his eyes, and he couldn't make things out distinctly. Here the army halted and spread out in a line, and there was a great deal of rearranging. A whole detachment of very dangerous-looking talking beasts, whom Shasta had not noticed before and were mostly of the cat kind, leopards, panthers, and the like, went padding and growling to take up their positions on the left. The giants were ordered to the right, and before going there they all took off something they had been carrying on their backs and sat down for a moment. Then Shasta saw that what they had been carrying and were now putting on were pairs of boots, horrid, heavy, spiked boots which came up to their knees. Then they sloped their huge clubs over their shoulders and marched to their battle position. The archers with Queen Lucy fell to the rear, and you could first see them bending their bows, and then hear the twang as they tested the strings. And wherever you looked you could see people tightening girths, putting on helmets, drawing swords, and throwing cloaks to the ground. There was hardly any talking now. It was very solemn and very dreadful. "I'm in for it now. I really am in for it now," thought Shasta. Then there came noises far ahead, the sound of many men shouting, and a steady thud, thud, thud. "Battering ram," whispered Corin. "They're battering the gate." Even Corin looked quite serious now. "Why doesn't King Edmund get on?" he said. "I can't stand this waiting about. Chilly, too." Shasta nodded, hoping he didn't look as frightened as he felt. The trumpet at last! On the move now trotting, the banner streaming out in the wind. They had topped a low ridge, and below them the whole scene suddenly opened out. A little, many-towered castle with its gate towards them. No moat, unfortunately, but of course the gate shut and the portcullis down. On the walls they could see, like little white dots, the faces of the defenders. Down below, about 50 of the Calamines, dismounted, were steadily swinging a great tree trunk against the gate. But at once the scene changed. The main bulk of Rabadash's men had been on foot ready to assault the gate, but now he had seen the Narnians sweeping down from the ridge. There is no doubt these Calamines are wonderfully trained. It seemed to Shasta only a second before a whole line of the enemy were on horseback again, wheeling round to meet them, swinging towards them. And now a gallop. The ground between the two armies grew less every moment. Faster, faster, all swords out now, all shields up to the nose, all prayers said, all teeth clenched. Shasta was dreadfully frightened, but it suddenly came into his head. If you funk this, you'll funk every battle all your life. Now or never. But when at last the two lines met he had really very little idea of what happened. There was a frightful confusion and an appalling noise. His sword was knocked clean out of his hand pretty soon, and he got the reins tangled somehow. Then he found himself slipping. Then a spear came straight at him. As he ducked to avoid it, he rolled right off his horse, bashed his left knuckles terribly against someone else's armor, and then— But it is no use trying to describe the battle from Shasta's point of view. He understood too little of the fight in general, and even of his own part in it. The best way I can tell you what really happened is to take you some miles away to where the hermit of the southern march sat gazing into the smooth pool beneath the spreading tree, with Bray and Hwin and Aravis beside him. For it was in this pool that the hermit looked when he wanted to know what was going on in the world outside the green walls of his hermitage. There, as in a mirror, he could see, at certain times, what was going on in the streets of cities far further south than Tashbaan, or what ships were putting into Red Haven in the remote Seven Isles, or what robbers or wild beasts stirred in the great western forest between Lantern Waste and Telmar. In all this day he had hardly left his pool, even to eat or drink, for he knew that great events were on foot in Archenland. Aravis and the horses gazed into it too. They could see it was a magic pool. Instead of reflecting the tree and the sky, it revealed cloudy and colored shapes moving, always moving in its depths, but they could see nothing clearly. The hermit could, and from time to time he told them what he saw. A little while before Shasta rode into his first battle, the hermit had begun speaking like this: "I see one, two, three eagles wheeling in the gap by Stormness Head. One is the oldest of all the eagles. He would not be out unless battle was at hand. I see him wheel to and fro, peering down sometimes at Enbard and sometimes to the east behind Stormness. Ah, I see now what Rapidash and his men have been so busy at all day. They have felled and lopped a great tree, and they are now coming out of the woods carrying it as a ram. They have learned something from the failure of last night's assault. He would have been wiser if he had set his men to making ladders, but it takes longer and he is impatient. Fool that he is! He ought to have ridden back to Tashbaan as soon as the first attack failed, for his whole plan depended on speed and surprise. Now they're bringing their ram into position. King Loon's men are shooting hard from the walls. 5 Calamines have fallen, but not many will. They have their shields above their heads. Rapidash is giving his orders now. With him are his most trusted lords, fierce Tarkans from the eastern provinces. I can see their faces. There's Corridon of Castle Torment, and Azru, Chalamash, and Ilgamuth of the Twisted Lip, and a tall Tarkan with a crimson beard. "By the mane, my old master Anradin," said Bree. "Shh!" said Aravis. "Now the ram has started. If I could hear as well as see, what a noise that would make! Stroke after stroke, and no gate can stand it forever. But wait! Something up by Stormness has scared the birds. They're coming out in masses. Wait again. I can't see yet. Ah! Now I can. The whole ridge up on the east is black with horsemen. If only the wind would catch that standard and spread it out. They're over the ridge now, whoever they are. Aha! I've seen the banner now. Narnia! Narnia! It's the Red Lion! They're in full career down the hill now. I can see King Edmund. There's a woman behind among the archers. Oh! What is it? Asked Wynne breathlessly. All his cats are dashing out from the left of the line. Cats, said Aravis. Great cats, leopards and such, said the hermit impatiently. I see, I see. The cats are coming round in a circle to get at the horses of the dismounted men. A good stroke. The Calamine horses are mad with terror already. Now the cats are in among them, but Rapidash has reformed his line and has 100 men in the saddle. They're riding to meet the Narnians. There's only 100 yards between the two lines now. 50. I can see King Edmund. I can see Lord Peridon. There are 2 mere children in the Narnian line. What can the king be about to let them into battle? Only 10 yards. The lines have met. The giants on the Narnian right are doing wonders. But one's down. Shot through the eye, I suppose. The center's all in a muddle. I can see more on the left. There are the two boys again. Lion alive, one is Prince Corin. The other, like him, as two peas. It's your little Shasta. Corin is fighting like a man. He's killed a Calamine. I can see a bit of the center now. Rapidash and Edmund almost met then, but the press has separated them. What about Shasta? Said Aravis. Oh, the fool! Groaned the hermit. Poor brave little fool! He knows nothing about this work. He's making no use at all of his shield. His whole side's exposed. He hasn't the faintest idea what to do with his sword. Oh, he's remembered it now. He's waving it wildly about. Nearly cut his own pony's head off. And he will in a moment if he's not careful. It's been knocked out of his hand now. It's mere murder sending a child into the battle. He can't live 5 minutes. Duck, you fool! Oh, he's down. Killed? Asked 3 voices breathlessly. How can I tell? Said the hermit. The cats have done their work. All the riderless horses are dead or escaped now. No escape for the Calamines. No retreat for the Calamines on them. Now the cats are turning back into the main battle. They're leaping onto the ramsmen. The ram is down. Oh, good, good. The gates are opening from the inside. There's going to be a sortie. The first 3 are out. It's King Loon in the middle, the brothers Dar and Darren on each side of them. Behind them are Tran and Shar and Cole with his brother Colin. There are 10, 20, nearly 30 of them out by now. Oh, the Calamine line is being forced back upon them. King Edmund is dealing marvelous strokes. He's just slashed Corridon's head off. Lots of Calamines have thrown down their arms and are running for the woods. Those that remain are hard pressed. The giants are closing in on the right, the cats on the left, King Loon from the rear. The Calamines are a little knot now, fighting back to back. Your Tarkin's down, Bree. Loon and Azru are fighting hand to hand. The king looks like winning. King is keeping it up well. The king has won. Azru's down. King Edmund's down. No, he's up at it again. He's at it with Rapidash. They're fighting in the very gate of the castle. Several Calamines have surrendered. Darren has killed Ilgamuth. I can't see what's happened to Rapidash. I think he's dead. Leaning against the castle wall, but I don't know. Shlamash and King Edmund are still fighting, but the battle is over everywhere else. Shlamash has surrendered. The battle is over. The Calamines are utterly defeated. When Shasta fell off his horse, he gave himself up for loss. But horses, even in a battle, tread on human beings very much less than you would suppose. After a very horrible 10 minutes or so, Shasta realized suddenly that there were no longer any horses stamping about in the immediate neighborhood, and that the noise, for there were still a good many noises going on, were no longer that of a battle. He sat up and stared about him. Even he, little as he knew of battles, could soon see that the Archenlanders and Narnians have won. The only living Calamines he could see were prisoners. The castle gates were wide open, and King Loon and King Edmund were shaking hands across the battering ram. From the circle of lords and warriors around them there arose a sound of breathless and excited, but obviously cheerful conversation. And then, suddenly, it all united and swelled into a great roar of laughter. Shasta picked himself up feeling uncommonly stiff, and ran towards the sound to see what the joke was. A very curious sight met his eyes. The unfortunate Rapidash appeared to be suspended from the castle walls. His feet, which were about 2 feet from the ground, were kicking wildly. His chain shirt was somehow hitched up so that it was horribly tight under the arms and came halfway over his face. In fact, he looked just as a man looks if you catch him in the very act of getting into a stiff shirt that's a little too small for him. As could be made out afterwards, and you may be sure the story was well talked over for many a day, what had happened was something like this. Early in the battle, one of the giants had made an unsuccessful stamp at Rapidash with his spiked boot. Unsuccessful because it didn't crush Rapidash, which was what the giant had intended, but not quite useless because one of the spikes tore the chain mail, just as you or I might tear an ordinary shirt. So Rapidash, by the time he encountered Edmund at the gate, had a hole in the back of his hauberk. Here's the picture of the disgraced and humiliated Rapidash. And when Edmund pressed him back nearer and nearer to the wall, he jumped up on a mounting block and stood there, raining down blows on Edmund from above. But then, finding that his position, by raising him above the heads of everyone else, made him a mark for every arrow from the Narnian bows, he decided to jump down again. And he meant to look and sound, no doubt for a moment he did look and sound, very grand and very dreadful as he jumped crying, "The bolt of Tash falls from above!" But he had to jump sideways because the crowd in front of him left him no landing place in that direction. And then, in the neatest way you could wish, the tear in the back of his hauberk caught on a hook in the wall. Ages ago this hook had had a ring in it for tying horses to, and there he found himself, like a piece of washing hung up to dry, with everyone laughing at him. "Let me down, Edmund!" howled Rabadash. "Let me down and fight me like a king and a man, or if you're too great a coward to do that, kill me at once." "Certainly," began King Edmund, but King Loon interrupted. "By your Majesty's good leave," said King Loon to Edmund. "Not so." Then turning to Rabadash, he said, "Your Royal Highness, if you had given that challenge a week ago, I'll answer for it there was no one in King Edmund's dominion, from the High King down to the smallest talking mouse, who would have refused it. But by attacking our castle of Anvard in time of peace without defiance sent, you have proved yourself no knight, but a traitor, and one rather to be whipped by the hangman than to be suffered to cross swords with any person of honor. Take him down, bind him, and carry him within till our pleasure is further known." Strong hands wrenched Rabadash's sword from him, and he was carried away into the castle, shouting, threatening, cursing, and even crying. For though he could have faced torture, he couldn't bear being made ridiculous. In Tashbaan, everyone had always taken him seriously. At that moment, Corin ran up to Shasta, seized his hand, and started dragging him towards King Loon. "Here he is, father! Here he is!" cried Corin. "Ay, and here thou art at last," said the king in a very gruff voice, "and hast been in the battle, clean contrary to your obedience. A boy to break a father's heart! At your age, a rod to your breech were fitter than a sword in your fist. Ha!" But everyone, including Corin, could see that the king was very proud of him. "Chide him no more, sire, if it please you," said Lord Darren. "His Highness would not be your son if he did not inherit your conditions. It would grieve your Majesty more if he had to be reproved for the opposite fault." Here's a picture of the two boys and King Loon. Or is that Lord Darren? Who knows? "Well, well," grumbled the king, "we'll pass it over for this time. And now—" What came next surprised Shasta as much as anything that had ever happened to him in his life. He found himself suddenly embraced in a bear-like hug by King Loon and kissed on both cheeks. Then the king set him down again and said, "Stand here together, boys, and let all the court see you. Hold up your heads. Now, gentlemen, look on them both. Has any man any doubts?" And still Shasta could not understand why everyone stared at him and at Corin, nor what all the cheering was about. Chapter 14. How Bree Became a Wiser Horse. We must now return to Aravis and the horses. The hermit watching his pond was able to tell them that Shasta was not killed or even seriously wounded, for he saw him get up and saw how affectionately he was greeted by King Loon. But as he could only see, not hear, he did not know what anyone was saying, and once the fighting had stopped and the talking had begun, it was not worth while looking in the pool any longer. Next morning, while the hermit was indoors, the three of them discussed what they should do next. "I've had enough of this," said Win. "The hermit has been very good to us, and I'm very much obliged to him, I'm sure. But I'm getting as fat as a pet pony, eating all day and getting no exercise. Let's go on to Narnia."
"No, not today, ma'am," said Bree. "I wouldn't hurry things. Some other day, don't you think?"
"We must see Shasta first and say goodbye to him, and apologize," said Aravis.
"Exactly,"
said Bree with great enthusiasm.
"Just what I was going to say."
"Oh, of course," said Win. "I expect he's in Anvard. Naturally we'd look in on him and say goodbye, but that's on our way. And why shouldn't we start at once? After all, I thought it was Narnia we all wanted to get to." "I suppose so," said Aravis. She was beginning to wonder what exactly she would do when she got there and was feeling a little lonely.
Of course," said Bree hastily. "But there's no need to rush things, if you know what I mean."
"No, I don't know what you mean," said Win. "Why don't you want to go?"
muttered Bree. "Well, don't you see, ma'am? It's an important occasion, returning to one's own country, entering society, the best society. It is so essential to make a good impression. Not perhaps looking quite ourselves yet, eh?"
Win broke out into a horse laugh. "It's your tail, Bree. I see it all now. You want to wait till your tail's grown again. And we don't even know if tails are worn long in Narnia. Really, Bree, you're as vain as the Tarkina and Tashbaan." "You are silly, Bree," said Aravis.
"By the lion's mane, Tarkina, I'm nothing of the sort," said Bree indignantly. "I have a proper respect for myself and for my fellow horses, that's all."
"Bree," said Aravis, who was not very interested in the cut of his tail, "I've been wanting to ask you something for a long time. Why do you keep on swearing by the lion and by the lion's mane? I thought you hated lions."
"So I do," answered Bree. "But when I speak of the lion, of course I mean Aslan, the great deliverer of Narnia who drove away the witch in the winter. All Narnians swear by him."
"But is he a lion?"
"No, no, of course not," said Bree in a rather shocked voice.
"All the stories about him in Tashbaan say he is," replied Aravis. "And if he isn't a lion, why do you call him a lion?"
"Well, you'd hardly understand that at your age," said Bree, "and I was only a little fool when I left, so I don't quite fully understand it myself."
Bree was standing with his back to the green wall while he said this, and the other two were facing him. He was talking in a rather superior tone, with his eyes half shut. That was why he didn't see the changed expression in the faces of Win and Aravis. They had good reason to have open mouths and staring eyes, because while Bree spoke they saw an enormous lion leap up from outside and balance itself on the top of the green wall. Only it was a brighter yellow, and it was bigger and more beautiful and more alarming than any lion they had ever seen. And at once it jumped down inside the wall and began approaching Bree from behind. It made no noise at all, and Win and Aravis couldn't make any noise themselves, no more than if they were frozen.
"No doubt," continued Bree, "when they speak of him as a lion, they only mean he's as strong as a lion, or, to our enemies, of course, as fierce as a lion, or something of that kind. Even a little girl like you, Aravis, must see that it would be quite absurd to suppose he is a real lion. Indeed, it would be disrespectful. If he was a lion, he'd have to be a beast, just like the rest of us. Why, and here Bree began to laugh. If he was a lion, he'd have four paws, and a tail, and whiskers? Help! But just as he said the word whiskers, one of Aslan's had actually tickled his ear. Bree shot away like an arrow to the other side of the enclosure and there turned. The wall was too high for him to jump, and he could fly no further. Aravis and Wynne both started back. There was about a second of intense silence. Then Wynne, though shaking all over, gave a strange little neigh and trotted across to the lion. "Please," she said, "you're so beautiful. You may eat me if you like. I'd sooner be eaten by you than fed on by someone else."
"Dearest daughter,"
said Aslan, planting a lion's kiss on her twitching velvet nose,
"I knew you would not be long in coming to me. Joy shall be yours."
then he lifted his head and spoke in a louder voice.
"Now, Bree,"
He said,
"you poor, proud, frightened horse, draw near. Nearer still, my son. Do not dare not to dare. Touch me. Smell me. Here are my paws. Here is my tail. These are my whiskers. I am a true beast."
"Aslan," said Bree in a shaken voice, "I'm afraid I must be rather a fool."
Happy the horse who knows that while he is still young, or the human either. Draw near, Aravis, my daughter. See, my paws are velveted. You will not be torn this time.
"This time, sir?" said Aravis.
It was I who wounded you.
said Aslan.
I am the only lion you met in all your journeyings. Do you know why I tore you?
"No, sir."
The scratches on your back, tear for tear, throb for blood, blood for blood, were equal to the stripes laid on the back of your stepmother's slave because of the drugged sleep you cast upon her. You needed to know what it felt like.
"Yes, sir. Please,"
Ask on, my dear.
said Aslan. "Will any more harm come to her by what I did?"
Child,
said the lion.
I am telling you your story, not hers. No one is told any story but their own.
Then he shook his head and spoke in a lighter voice.
Be merry, little ones, he said. We shall meet soon again, but before that, you will have another visitor.
Then in one bound he reached the top of the wall and vanished from their sight. Strange to say, they felt no inclination to talk to one another about him after he had gone. They all moved slowly away to different parts of the quiet grass and there paced to and fro, each alone, thinking. About half an hour later the two horses were summoned to the back of the house to eat something nice that the hermit had got ready for them, and Aravis, still walking and thinking, was startled by the harsh sound of a trumpet outside the gate. "Who's there?" said Aravis.
His Royal Highness, Prince Cor of Archenland,
said a voice from outside. Aravis undid the door and opened it, drawing back a little way to let the strangers in. Two soldiers with halberds came first and took their stand at each side of the entry. Then followed a herald and the trumpeter. "His Royal Highness Prince Cor of Archenland desires an audience of the Lady Aravis," said the herald. Then he and the trumpeter drew aside and bowed, and all the soldiers saluted, and the prince himself came in. All his attendants withdrew and closed the gate behind them. The prince bowed, and a very clumsy bow for a prince it was. Aravis curtsied in the Calamine style, which is not at all like ours. and did it very well because of course she had been taught how. Then she looked up and saw what sort of person this prince was. She saw a mere boy. He was bareheaded, and his fair hair was encircled with a very thin band of gold, hardly thicker than a wire. His upper tunic was of white cambric, as fine as a handkerchief, so that the bright red tunic beneath it showed through. His left hand, which rested on his enameled sword hilt, was bandaged. Aravis looked twice at his face before she gasped and said, "Why, it's Shasta!" Shasta all at once turned very red and began speaking very quickly. "Look here, Aravis," he said, "I do hope you won't think I've got up like this, and the trumpeter and all, to try to impress you or make out that I'm different or any rot of that sort. Because I'd far rather have come in my old clothes, but they're burnt now, and my father said—" "Your father?" said Aravis. "Apparently King Loon is my father," said Shasta. I might really have guessed it, Corn being so like me. We were twins, you see. Oh, and my name isn't Shasta, it's Cor. Cor is a nicer name than Shasta, said Aravis. Brothers' names run like that in Archenland, said Shasta, or Prince Cor, as we must now call him. Like Dare and Darren, Cole and Colin, and so on. Shasta, I mean Cor, said Aravis. No, shut up. There's something I've got to say at once. I'm sorry I've been such a pig, but I did change before I knew you were a prince. Honestly, I did. When you went back and raced the lion, it really wasn't going to kill you at all, that lion, said Cor. Here is Prince Cor, pronounced like Core, C-O-R-E, but spelled like Cor. I know, said Aravis, nodding. Both were still and solemn for a moment as each saw that the other knew about Aslan. Suddenly Aravis remembered Cor's bandaged hand. "I say," she cried, "I forgot. You've been in a battle. Is that a wound?" "A mere scratch," said Cor, using for the first time a rather lordly tone. But a moment later he burst out laughing and said, "If you want to know the truth, it isn't a proper wound at all. I only took the skin off my knuckles, just as any clumsy fool might do without going near a battle." "Still, you were in the battle," said Aravis. "It must have been wonderful." "It wasn't at all like what I thought," said Cor. "But Cor, I mean, you haven't told me anything yet about King Loon and how he found out who you were." "Well, let's sit down," said Cor, "for it's rather a long story. And by the way, father's an absolute brick. I'd be just as pleased, or very nearly, at finding he's my father even if he wasn't a king. Even though education and all sorts of horrible things are going to happen to me. But you want the story. Well, Corin and I were twins, and about a week after we were both born, apparently they took us to a wise old centaur in Narnia to be blessed or something. Now this centaur was a prophet, as a good many centaurs are. Perhaps you haven't seen any centaurs yet. There were some in the battle yesterday. Most remarkable people, but I can't say I feel quite at home with them yet. I say, Aravis, there are going to be a lot of things to get used to in these northern countries." "Yes, there are," said Aravis, "but get on with the story." "Well, as soon as he saw Corin and me, it seems the centaur looked at me and said, 'A day will come when that boy will save Archenland from the deadliest danger in which ever she lay.' So of course my father and mother were very pleased. But there was someone present who wasn't. This was a chap called the Lord Barr, who had been the father's Lord Chancellor, and apparently he'd done something wrong. Beziling, or some word like that? I didn't understand that part very well. And father had had to dismiss him. But nothing else was done to him, and he was allowed to go on living in Archenland. But he must have been as bad as could be,
for it came out afterwards he had been in the pay of the Tisroc and had sent a lot of secret information to Tashban. So as soon as he heard I was going to save Arkenlin from a great danger, he decided I must be put out of the way. Well, he succeeded in kidnapping me, I don't exactly know how, and rowed away down the winding arrow to the coast. He'd had everything prepared, and there was a ship manned with his own followers lying ready for him, and he put out to sea with me on board. Here's a sort of mirror describing the events. But father got wind of it, though not quite in time, and was after him as quickly as he could. The Lord Bar was already at sea when father reached the coast, but not out of sight, and father was embarked in one of his own warships within 20 minutes. It must have been a wonderful chase. They were 6 days following Bar's galleon and brought her to battle on the 7th. It was a great sea fight. I heard a lot about it yesterday evening, from 10 o'clock in the morning till sunset. Our people took the ship in the end, but I wasn't there. The Lord Bar himself had been killed in the battle, but one of his men said that early that morning, as soon as he saw he was certain to be overhauled, Bar had given me to one of his knights and sent us both away in the ship's boat, and that boat was never seen again. But of course that was the same boat that Aslan, he seems to be at the back of all these stories, pushed ashore at the right place for Arshish to pick me up. I wish I knew that knight's name, for he must have kept me alive and starved himself to do it. I suppose Aslan would say that was part of someone else's story, said Aravis. I was forgetting that, said Cor. And I wonder how the prophecy will work out, said Aravis, and what the danger is that you've to save Arkenland from. Well, said Cor rather awkwardly, they seem to think I've done it already. Aravis clapped her hands. Why, of course, she said. How stupid I am, and how wonderful. Arkenland can never be in much greater danger than it was when Rabadash had crossed the Arrow with his 200 horses, and you hadn't yet got through with your message. Don't you feel proud? I think I feel a bit scared, said Cor. And you'll be living at Anvard now, said Aravis rather wistfully. Oh, said Cor, I nearly forgot what I came about. Father wants you to come and live with us. He says there's been no lady in the court, they call it the court, I don't know why, since mother died. Do, Aravis, you'll like father. And Corin, they're not like me, they've been properly brought up. You needn't be afraid that... Oh, stop it, said Aravis, or we'll have a real fight. Of course I'll come. Now let's go and see the horses, said Cor. There was a great and joyous meeting between Bree and Cor, and Bree, who was still in a rather subdued frame of mind, agreed to set out for Anvard at once. He and Wyn would cross into Narnia on the following day. All four bade an affectionate farewell to the hermit and promised that they would soon visit him again. By about the middle of the morning they were on their way. The horses had expected that Aravis and Cor would ride, but Cor explained that except in war, where everyone must do what he can do best, no one in Narnia or Auchinland ever dreamed of mounting a talking horse. This reminded poor Bree again of how little he knew about Narnian customs, and what dreadful mistakes he might make. So while Wyn strolled along in a happy dream, Bree got more nervous and more self-conscious with every step he took. Buck up, Bree, said Cor. It's far worse for me than for you. You aren't going to be educated. I shall be learning reading and writing and heraldry and dancing and history and music, while you'll be galloping rolling on the hills of Narnia to your heart's content. But that's just the point, groaned Bree. Do talking horses roll? Supposing they don't? I can't bear to give it up. What do you think, Wyn? I'm going to row anyway, said Wyn. I don't suppose any of them will care 2 lumps of sugar whether you roll or not. Are we near that castle? Said Bree to Cor. Round the next bend, said the prince. Well, said Bree, I'm going to have a good one now. It may be the last. Wait for me a minute. It was 5 minutes before he rose again, blowing hard and covered with bits of bracken.
"Now I'm ready,"
he said in a voice of profound gloom.
"Lead on, Prince Kor. Narnia and the North."
But he looked more like a horse going to a funeral than a long-lost captive returning to home and freedom.
Is Bree doing what could be his last row?
Chapter 15. Rabadash the Ridiculous. The next turn of the road brought them out from among the trees, and there, across green lawns, sheltered from the north wind by the high wooded ridge at its back, they saw the castle of Anbard. It was very old, and built of a warm reddish-brown stone. Before they had reached the gate, King Loon came out to meet them, not looking at all like Aravis's idea of a king, and wearing the oldest of old clothes, for he had just come from making a round of the kennels with his huntsmen, and had only stopped for a moment to wash his doggy hands. But the bow with which he greeted Aravis as he took her hand would have been stately enough for an emperor.
"Little lady," he said, "we bid you very heartily welcome. If my dear wife were still alive we could make you better cheer, but could not do it with a better will. And I am sorry that you have had misfortunes and have been driven from your father's house, which cannot but be a grief to you. My son Kor has told me about your adventures together, and all your valor."
"It was he who did all that, sir," said Aravis. "Why, he rushed at a lion to save me."
"What's that?" said King Loon, his face brightening. "I haven't heard that part of the story."
Then Aravis told it, and Kor, who had very much wanted the story to be known, though he felt he couldn't tell it himself, didn't enjoy it so much as he had expected, and indeed felt rather foolish. But his father enjoyed it very much indeed, and in the course of the next few weeks told it to so many people that Kor wished it had never happened. Then the king turned to Gwyn and Bree and was just as polite to them as to Aravis, and asked them a lot of questions about their families and where they had lived in Narnia before they had been captured. The horses were rather tongue-tied, for they weren't yet used to being talked to as equals by humans. Grown-up humans, that is. They didn't mind Aravis and Kor. Presently Queen Lucy came out from the castle and joined them, and King Loon said to Aravis, "My dear, here is a loving friend of our house, and she has been seeing that your apartments are put to rights for you better than I could have done it." "You'd like to come and see them, wouldn't you?" said Lucy, kissing Aravis. They liked each other at once, and soon went away together to talk about Aravis's bedroom, and Aravis's boudoir, and about getting clothes for her, and all the sorts of things girls do talk about on such an occasion. After lunch, which they had on the terrace, it was cold birds and cold game pie with wine and bread and cheese. King Loon ruffled up his brow and heaved a sigh and said, "Hi-ho! We have still that sorry creature Rabadash on our hands, my friends, and must needs resolve what to do with him." Lucy was sitting on the king's right, and Aravis on his left. King Edmund sat at one end of the table, and the Lord Darren faced him at the other. Dare and Paradin and Kor and Corin were on the same side as their king.
"Your Majesty would have a perfect right to strike off his head,"
said Paradin.
"Such an assault as he made puts him on a level with assassins."
"It is very true," said Edmund,
"But even a traitor may mend. I have known one that did."
and he looked very thoughtful.
"To kill this Rabadash would go near to raising war with the Tisrook," said Darren.
A fig for the Tisrook, said King Loon. His strength is in numbers, and numbers will never cross the desert. But I have no stomach for killing men, even traitors, in cold blood. To have cut his throat in the battle would have eased my heart mightily, but this is a different thing."
"By my counsel," said Lucy, "your Majesty shall give him another trial. Let him go free on straight promise of fair dealing in the future. It may be that he will keep his word."
Maybe apes will grow honest, sister, said Edmund. But by the lion, if he breaks it again, it may be in such time and place that any of us could swap off his head in clean battle. It shall be tried, said the king, and then to one of his attendants, send for the prisoner, friend. Rabadash was brought before them in chains. To look at him, anyone would have supposed that he had passed the night in a noisome dungeon without food or water, but in reality he had been shut up in quite a comfortable room and provided with an excellent supper. But as he was soaking far too furiously to touch the supper, and had spent the whole night stamping and roaring and cursing, he naturally did not now look his best. "Your Royal Highness needs not to be told," said King Loon, "that by the law of nations, as well as by all reasons of prudent policy, we have as good right to your head as ever one mortal man had against another. Nevertheless, in consideration of your youth and the ill nurture, devoid of all gentillesse and courtesy, which you have doubtless had in the land of slaves and tyrants, we're disposed to set you free, unharmed, on these conditions. First, that—" "Curse you for a barbarian dog!" spluttered Rabadash. "Do you think I will even hear your conditions? Faugh! You talk very largely of nurture, and I know not what. It's easy to a man in chains. Take off these vile bonds. Give me a sword, and let any of you who dares then debate with me." Nearly all the lords sprang to their feet, and Corin shouted, "Father, can I box him, please?" "Peace, your majesties, my lords," said King Loon. "Have we no more gravity among us than to be so chafed by the taunt of a Pajuk? Sit down, Corin, or shalt leave the table. I ask your highness again to hear our conditions." "I hear no conditions from barbarians and sorcerers," said Rabadash. "Not one of you dare touch a hair of my head. Every insult you have heaped on me shall be paid with oceans of Narnian and Archenlandish blood. Terrible shall the vengeance of the Tisroc be, even now. But kill me, and the burnings and torturings in these northern lands shall become a tale to frighten the world 1,000 years hence. Beware, beware, beware! The bolt of Tash falls from above." "Does it ever get caught on a hook halfway?" asked Corin. "Shame, Corin," said the king. "Never taunt a man save when he is stronger than you. Then as you please."
"Oh, you foolish Rabadash!"
sighed Lucy. Next moment Cole wondered why everyone at the table had risen and was standing perfectly still. Of course he did the same himself, and then he saw the reason. Aslan was among them, though no one had seen him coming. Rabadash started as the immense shape of the lion paced softly in between him and his accusers. "Rabadash," said Aslan, "take heed. Your doom is very near, but you may still avoid it. Forget your pride. What have you to be proud of? And your anger. Who has done you wrong? And accept the mercy of these good kings." Then Rabadash rolled his eyes and spread out his mouth into a horrible, long, mirthless grin like a shark, and wagged his ears up and down. Anyone can learn how to do this if they take the trouble to. He had always found this very effective in Calaman. The bravest had trembled when he made these faces, and ordinary people had fallen to the floor, and sensitive people had often fainted. But what Rabadash hadn't realized is that it is very easy to frighten people who know you can have them boiled alive the moment you give the word. The grimaces didn't look at all alarming in Archenland. Indeed, Lucy only thought Rabadash was going to be sick. "Demon! Demon! Demon!" shrieked the prince. "I know you! You are the foul fiend of Narnia! You are the enemy of the gods! Learn who I am, horrible phantasm! I am descended from Tash, the inexorable, the irresistible! The curse of Tash is upon you!
Lightning in the shape of scorpions shall be rained on you. The mountains of Narnia shall be ground into dust. The bull—" "Have a care, Rapidash," said Aslan quietly. "The doom is nearer now. It is at the door. It has lifted the latch." "Let the skies fall!" shrieked Rapidash. "Let the earth gape! Let blood and fire obliterate the world! But be sure I will never desist till I have dragged to my palace by her hair the barbarian queen, the daughter of dogs, "The hour has struck," said Aslan, and Rapidash saw to his supreme horror that everyone had begun to laugh. They couldn't help it. Rapidash had been wagging his ears all the time, and as soon as Aslan said the hour has struck, the ears began to change. They grew longer and more pointed, and soon were covered with gray hair. And while everyone was wondering where they had seen ears like that before, Rapidash's face began to change too. It grew longer and thicker at the top and larger eyed, and the nose sank back into the face, or else the face swelled out and became all nose, and there was hair all over it. And his arms grew longer and came down in front of him till his hands were resting on the ground, only they weren't hands. Now they were hooves, and he was standing on all fours, and his clothes disappeared, and everyone laughed louder and louder because they couldn't help it, for now what had been Rapidash was simply and unmistakably a donkey. The terrible thing was that his human speech lasted just a moment longer than his human shape, so that when he realized the change that was coming over him, he screamed out, "Oh, not a donkey! Mercy! If it were even a horse! Even a horse! In a horse! Yeah." And so the words died away into a donkey's bray. "Now hear me, Rapidash," said Aslan. "Justice shall be mixed with mercy. You shall not always be an ass." At this, of course, the donkey twitched its ears forward, and that also was so funny that everyone laughed all the more. They tried not to, but they tried in vain. "You have appealed to Tash," said Aslan, "and in the temple of Tash you shall be healed. You must stand before the altar of Tash in Tashbaan at the great autumn feast this year, and there, in the sight of all Tashbaan, your ass's shape will fall from you, and all men will know you for Prince Rapidash. But as long as you live, if ever you go more than 10 miles away from the great temple in Tashbaan, you shall instantly become again as you now are, and from that second change there will be no return." There was a short silence, and then they all stirred and looked at one another as if they were waking from sleep. Aslan was gone, but there was a brightness in the air and on the grass and a joy in their hearts which assured them that he had been no dream. And anyway, there was the donkey in front of them. King Loon was the kindest hearted of men, and on seeing his enemy in this regrettable condition, he forgot all his anger. "Your Royal Highness," he said, "I am most truly sorry that things have come to this extremity. Your Highness will bear witness that it was none of our doing, and of course we shall be delighted to provide your Highness with shipping back to Tashbaan for the uh, treatment which Aslan has prescribed. You shall have every comfort which your Highness's situation allows, the best of the cattle boats, the freshest carrots and thistles." But a deafening bray from the donkey and a well-aimed kick at one of the guards made it clear that these kindly offers were ungratefully received. And here, to get him out of the way, I'd better finish off the story of Rapidash. He, or it, was duly sent back by boat to Tashban and brought into the temple of Tash at the great autumn festival, and then he became a man again. But of course 4 or 5 thousand people had seen the transformation, and the affair could not possibly be hushed up. And after the old Tisrock's death, when Rabadash became Tisrock in his place, he turned out the most peaceable Tisrock Kellerman had ever known. This was because, not daring to go more than 10 miles from Tashban, he could never go on a war himself, and he didn't want his Tarkans to win fame in the wars at his expense, for that is the way Tisrocks get overthrown. But though his reasons were selfish, it made things much more comfortable for all the smaller countries around Kalaman. His own people never forgot that he had been a donkey during his reign, and to his face he was called Rabadash the Peacemaker. But after his death, and behind his back, he was called Rabadash the Ridiculous. And if you look him up in a good history of Kalaman, try the local library, you will find him under that name. And to this day, in Kalaman schools, if you do anything unusually stupid, you are very likely to be called a second Rabadash. Meanwhile, at Anvard, everyone was very glad that he had been disposed of before the real fun began, which was a grand feast held that evening on the lawn before the castle, with dozens of lanterns to help the moonlight. And the wine flowed, and tales were told, and jokes were cracked, and then silence was made, and the king's poet with 2 fiddlers stepped out into the middle of the circle. Aravis and Kor prepared themselves to be bored, for the only poetry they knew was the Calamine kind, and you know now what that was like. But at the very first scrape of the fiddles, a rocket seemed to go up inside their heads, and the poet sang the great old lay of fair Ovin, and how he fought the giant Pyre and turned him into stone, and that is the origin of Mount Pyre. It was a 2-headed giant, and won the late Lady Liln for his bride, and when it was over they wished it was going to begin again. And though Bree couldn't sing, he told the story of the fight of Zalandre, and Lucy told again. They had all, except Aravis and Kor, heard it many times, but they all wanted it again. The tale of the wardrobe, and how she and King Edmund and Queen Susan and Peter the High King had first come into Narnia. And presently, as was certain to happen sooner or later, King Lune said it was time for young people to be in bed. "And tomorrow, Kor," he added, "shalt come over all the castle with me and see the Esters and mark all its strength and weakness, for it will be thine to guard when I am gone." "But Corin will be the king then, father," said Kor. "Nay, lad," said King Lune, "thou art my heir. The crown comes to thee."
"But I don't want it," said Kor. "I'd far rather—"
"'Tis no question what thou wantest, Kor, nor I either. 'Tis in course of law."
"But if we're twins, we must be the same age."
"Nay," said the king with a laugh, "one must come first. Art Corin's elder by a full 20 minutes, and is better too, let's hope, though that's no great mastery." And he looked at Corin with a twinkle in his eyes.
"But, father, couldn't you make whichever you like to be the next king?"
"No, the king's under the law, for it's the law makes him a king. Hast no more power to start away from thy crown than any sentry from his post."
"Oh dear," said Kor, "I don't want to at all. And Corin, I am most dreadfully sorry. I never dreamed my turning up was going to chisel you out of your kingdom."
"Hurrah, hurrah!" said Corin. "I shan't have to be king. I shan't have to be king. I'll always be a prince. Us princes have all the fun." "And that's truer than thy brother knows, Cor," said King Lune, "for this is what it means to be a king, to be first in every desperate attack, and last in every desperate retreat, and when there's hunger in the land, as must be now and then in bad years, to wear finer clothes and laugh louder over a scantier meal than any man in your land."
When the 2 boys were going upstairs to bed, Kor again asked Corin if nothing could be done about it, and Corin said,
"If you say another word about it, I'll knock you down."
it would be nice to end the story by saying that after that the 2 brothers never disagreed about anything again, but I'm afraid it would not be true.
In reality, they quarreled and fought just about as often as any other two boys would, and all their fights ended, if they didn't begin, with Kor getting knocked down. For though, when they had both grown up and become swordsmen, Kor was the most dangerous man in battle, neither he nor anyone else in the North Countries could ever equal Corin as a boxer. That was how he got the name Corin Thunderfist, and how he performed his great exploit against the lapsed Bear of Stormness, which was really a talking bear but had gone back to wild bear habits. Corin climbed up to its lair on the Narnian side of Stormness one winter day when the snow was in the hills, and boxed it without a timekeeper for 33 rounds, and at the end it couldn't see out of its eyes and became a reformed character. Erebus also had many quarrels, and I'm afraid even fights, with Kor, but they always made it up again, so that years later, when they were grown up, they were so used to quarreling and making it up again, that they got married so as to go on doing it more conveniently. And after King Lune's death, they made a good king and queen of Archenland, and Ram the Great, the most famous of all the kings of Archenland, was their son. Bree and Win lived happily to a great age in Narnia, and both got married, but not to one another. And there weren't many months in which one or both of them didn't come trotting over the pass to visit their friends at Anvard. And that is the end of The Horse and His Boy. I love how abruptly C.S. Lewis epilogues his stories. Like he realizes I am sick of writing this one now, so I'm just going to go ahead and do a Where Are They Now epilogue, kind of like in those 80s movies where it shows a scene from earlier in the movie, or like some sort of like some sort of cast thing where someone will just turn to the camera and then a text will appear on screen. And then Corin Thunderfist fought a giant bear to blindness and made him reform. And then you'll see like footage of the two horses of like Bree and Win running through the countryside earlier in the story, and then it'll freeze frame and it'll be like Bree and Win lived to a ripe old age and got married, dash, but not to each other. And then you'll see an earlier scene of like Shasta or Kor and Aravis bickering with each other, and then it's the bit where it's like they continued to quarrel and then got married to do it more conveniently. And then the end credits start to roll. I love how this is set during the reign of like the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, that cast's like reign as like sovereigns of Narnia, and this is just a one-off in the middle of their reign that like hardly really registers to them. If you think about it, this whole story, the lives of these four people and this whole kingdom, just kind of a blip. Like they just kind of had a really disastrous Vegas weekend and came back home and then just kind of had like they kind of like the best way I could describe it is they had this like almost Vegas wedding with Rapidash and Susan. Then somebody sobered up and went no, and they ran back home. So Rapidash took his dudes to go to like their friend's house to start shit. And then Edmund and his friends went, hold up. And they went over, and there's just this huge fight on the front lawn. And that was just basically that one fucked up weekend that Edmund and Lucy aren't really gonna remember for the rest of their lives. This whole book that contains like the life and times of how the lost Prince Kor came back home and became king was just another weekend to Edmund. this King Peter, aka Sir. He's mentioned several times, but he's just off to the north fighting giants, I guess. Susan shows up just to run away from the wedding. Lucy shows up just to kind of speedwagon at everything. She doesn't even get to be a healer because she doesn't have her freaking flask with her. This whole story, Prince Rapidash goes off and lives his whole life as like a donkey until he doesn't, and then everyone talks shit about him for the rest of his life. Ah, yes, King Rapidash, our peacemaker. Like anytime anytime he announces some edict or whatever, the rest of the country's like, "Ah, thank you, King Rapidash. You are certainly a wiser king than your forebears." And everyone in his own land is like, "Pfft, more like Prince Rabbit ass." So, that was the horse and his boy. Chronologically, book three of the Chronicles of Narnia series. I think this is actually book five. Yeah, this is book five. So, um, hmm. I I have read, though not on stream, which one was it? The Magician's Nephew, which I think is book six, but chronologically book one, and the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which is chronologically book two, but was released as book one. So I've read those off stream. I don't know if I'll read them on stream. If anyone really wants me to, I can backtrack for them at some point. Or I could just kind of do a separate chatting stream where I sort of also catch everyone up on what those books are about so that you still get a bit of a like understanding of those events. I don't know. I'll figure it out. Um, wait, call it. The next one looks to be Prince Caspian and The Voyage of the Dawn Treader? Like, simultaneously? Did I read that right? Or is it Prince Caspian then The Voyage of the Dawn Treader? And? Then. Okay. Um, but yeah, I'll figure it out. In the meantime, though, this is the important part. I know we're at the part where I normally end stream because I reread the three chapters and all that stuff, and this is around the average runtime. But I am going to ask you guys. Typing up the poll options now and start poll. Did it work? It worked! Huzzah! So your choices, you have two choices. The Sign of Four, which is the second Sherlock Holmes adventure, and The Last Unicorn, which is um, The Last Unicorn. If you've seen the animated movie, it's probably the same story. I don't know. Let me actually double check. Yes, pretty sure this is the same one. What is the Sign of Four about? That is a great question I do not know the answer to. Let's see, what are... Nobody's voting? Alright, last unicorn. So far it looks like people want to keep the fantasy theme. How long is this one? Ooh, this one is small text. It does not have a freaking index. A table of context. Table of contents, I mean. There are 212 pages of this book. "14 chapters. Cool. 4 votes. Last Unicorn largely in favor, with Sherlock falling. Okay. Alright. Then pretty sure that's everyone who's watching right now. Because I forgot to tweet that I was live. Oops. Okay. And poll. Last Unicorn wins, so we'll be reading that next. Look at this. I'm just showing a random small text. This is gonna be fun to read. I'm not gonna make a poll for this one, but do you guys want me to do the freaking silly ass accent too, or no? I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna. I'm probably gonna read that one more normally. Because I'll be honest, I'm pretty sure everyone's already tired of me doing accents. At the very least, I'm bringing them back for Sherlock Holmes stories. You can't stop me. I don't care if my normal voice sounds bad. I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna use it for the last unicorn. uh, quick hydration break, everyone. Just gonna be right back. Alright, sorry about that. I just had to get some water. I know I'm close to ending stream, but you know. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I just wanted to use my BRB screen. It's a good reminder. Um, so tomorrow, I don't know if there's going to be a stream because it's my birthday. um, it's I don't know if I do a stream tomorrow. It's not going to be a reading stream. I want to like do something different, but I don't know what yet. So I don't even know what time I want to stream at. I'm probably gonna stream earlier if I do something tomorrow, so that way, like, you know, you guys have more time to like pop in and hang out. Um, but if you guys have any ideas, you can like let me know what if you want to do like a chatting thing, if you want to like figure out like maybe a way to like play a game. Um, we could figure out something like that. I mean, I'll have to spend tonight tooling around in OBS, figure out how to like hook up a game stream to game footage and all that to here. But
Um, yeah, if I do a stream tomorrow, it'll be maybe just a bit of a hangout or maybe a watch along. If I can't figure out how to do game stuff, we could do a watch along, as if anybody's interested. Um, so yeah, I think a watch along would be a pretty fun idea. But what would we do? Well, it's my birthday, so whatever I choose. um, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out, and I'll let you guys know. I'll post. I'll post on Twitter and other channels. I, why am I talking like I'm a professional? Not. Well, I guess I want to be. So, but yeah. I'll figure out what we're doing tomorrow. I'll finalize the plan. See what my plan is over on my end outside of Streamland, and I'll let you guys know. But for now, this is uh, this is where I gotta say goodbye, everybody. Um, just wanna just wanna thank you again for coming along with me on this journey to you know do a little bit of the first of hopefully many streamed read-alongs. So thank you very much for being my audience for that. Thank you for being being here at the beginning. This is the beginning of all this, you know? And it's so funny because one of my resolutions for the beginning of this year and one of my goals that I stated last year, last birthday, was that I wanted to stream. I wanted to begin streaming and I wanted to do something that would entertain people, something that would be fun, something that would, just something to finally get myself doing something that I wanted to do. And here at the very last week of current age number, I got to do this for you guys. So I want to thank you. I want to thank everyone, most of half of you who are watching right now, for being my initial non-stream test audience, and the other half of you who later became part of it after like the first book I read and just kind of encouraging me to do this sort of thing. This all started just because I wanted to like read more physical books and you know read more in general, you know. And I don't have any grand delusions about what I'm doing, but I feel like if somebody comes across either something they're nostalgic for or just something fun and new in the course of all this, as I read more literature and, you know, I'm always going to try to read what I want to read. I'm never going to compromise on that. But it's always going to be something fun and it's always going to be something engaging, you know. And I don't know, maybe as this evolves, as this grows, I'll maybe turn this into some sort of like book club sort of thing, where like I stream reading the passage to you guys and then we start having, I don't know, maybe post post section discussions or something. I don't know. If I have one delusion about what I want this to be, at least this particular segment, I kind of want to save literacy, which is insane to say, but not a lot of people read these days because there's not a lot of time to, really. So, if in some way I can contribute to people accessing, you know, thought provoking or just fun stories and literature, and if in the course of it somehow gets more people to like, think more critically or just sort of engage parts of their brain that they may not be used to, you know, I think it would be literacy. I swear. You are on fire with these name puns. I swear. I'm doing great. Starting is one of the most complicated steps to take. I'm so happy you're doing this. I'm really happy to be doing this too. And I am so grateful that you guys have. Oh my god. Reading comprehension. Comprehension. I I'm in good hands here. As long as you guys are my audience, I am in great hands. So thank you for encouraging me to start this journey, and thank you for being here with me. There's a lot more fun to be had. I can feel it. I'm gonna try to do more and change things up every now and then, and it's gonna be it's gonna be amazing. I think I think whatever shape this takes, it's something that we're all shaping together with you guys as my audience. We're gonna figure this out together. So, whew, I'm getting a little too emotional for someone who's only just done like 5 streams. I'm gonna look back on this someday and be like, what the hell were you talking about? In before, in before I get into a frickin' indie or corporal and I look back on this as my like frickin' audition material or something. Oh God, let's not think that far ahead. That's like saying maybe I'll land on the freaking moon in 2 years. But anyway, um, yeah, tomorrow's my birthday. I plan on doing something with you guys. I don't know what, but if I don't, we'll have a we'll have a stream tomorrow or Friday. Either way, we're gonna have a birthday celebration stream. I I've decided that much. I want to spend time with you guys and celebrate my birthday. And if we can't do it tomorrow, then we'll do it Friday. So either way, I'm gonna see you guys very soon. And until then, I want you to remember, make sure to eat well, make sure to stay hydrated, make sure to get good rest, and as always, unshrimp yourself. Check that posture and take care, okay? Be kind to yourselves and be excellent to each other. I love you all very much. Take good care, and I'll see you next time. Until then, this is Radiance VA signing out. Have a radiant rest of your night. Bye.